Many people get confused about my accents and often mistake my nationality. So let me put the record straight.
I'm Irish, and I love it. There is something special about being from this little island on the edge of Europe. If you can learn to live with the weather, that is. Irish people are so hospitable, and there is a huge sense of community. Another reason many of us are proud to be Irish is because in so many areas we punch way above our weight. We're a small country of about 4.5 million people, and yet you can see our marks all over the world. In the 1600s, we gave the world modern chemistry and chocolate milk. In the 1800s, we gave the world the Beaufort scale, the tattoo machine, and the submarine. In the 1900s, we gave the world radiotherapy, the ejector seat, and the Titanic. We just built it, we weren't behind the wheel. On the flip side, many of us have ridiculously pale skin, with the danger of being burnt even when indoors. We have a bad reputation for antisocial behaviour and a bad reputation for drinking. It can be embarrassing when everyone paints us with the same brush.
My identity as a Christian is similar in a way to my identity as an Irishman. While I love Christianity and I am proud to follow Jesus in my own humble and stumbling way, there are things that Christians have done throughout history within the church that make me embarrassed, or worse, make me ashamed. As we discuss this issue, I do not intend to sugarcoat the past. I want to be honest about what has happened down through the years. But before looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Christian church, it's important to grasp what church actually is. Now, I'm not talking about any specific church, but actually the whole Christian global church. And I'm not talking about a specific place either. As stunning as churches and cathedrals can be with their furnishings and their stained glass windows, ultimately they are buildings without the people inside the walls. I think the most helpful way to understand church is to view it as a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints. Jesus himself said that healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. God's offer of forgiveness to the world through the death of Jesus is an unconditional gift. It's not something you can earn, so to speak. It's not like you have to sort your life out or get everything in order before becoming a Christian. It's more the reality of letting forgiveness invade your life, no matter what situation you find yourself in, or no matter what your wrongdoing happens to be. There's a common criticism of the Christian church that I hear over and over again. Some will say that there are many people who are non-religious who are more kind, even more moral than many Christians. And this can be true. Let me explain why.
If the only body of people that could make up the church was from the people that Jesus encountered in his 3 years of ministry on earth, you would be shocked. That particular church would be full of crooked businessmen, common thieves, adulterers, and prostitutes amongst others. I'm not saying that these people remain the same, as their lives were ultimately transformed. But what if you met people from this church only days after their life-changing encounter with Jesus? If you were simply an onlooker who only knew their sin but not their story, might you be quick to judge the church as full of hypocrites or lowlifes?
I would suggest that many Christians won't compare well to the best of those who are non-religious, if based on moral behavior. At best, a Christian is a work in progress, and a functioning church will be filled with immature and broken people, some of whom will still have a long way to go as they develop emotionally, spiritually, and morally.
I've been asked a number of times how I can believe in God when there have been so many wars caused by religion. Some even suggest that if people of faith would just leave behind their convictions about the existence of a God, then the world would be a much better, more peaceful place. The truth is that there's already evidence to suggest that taking God out of the picture doesn't necessarily solve the problem of world peace. The 20th century has been described as the bloodiest of all the centuries. There has been more killing in it than all previous 19 centuries put together. Within the 20th century, we had the rise of the Chinese, the Cambodian, and the Russian regimes. These governments created societies that were absent of religion or belief in God, and yet they were still guilty of creating massive violence and death against its own people. So I think it would be unfair to blame religion as the cause of every war that's ever happened. But if you look at Christianity specifically and the atrocious things done in Jesus' name, it's a shocking reality, and there's no excusing it. Gandhi, the Indian non-violent activist who fought for Indian independence from Britain, once said that I love your Christ but not your Christians, because your Christians are so unlike your Christ. And Gandhi's criticism of Christianity speaks to the darker parts of Christian history. He was speaking out against those who claimed to be Christian, yet were guilty of such injustice. I can only imagine his thought process. How can Jesus' message of peacekeeping, love your enemies, and doing good to those who wrong you, justify war and death? Just think of the bloodshed during the Crusades, which was a series of wars during the Middle Ages between the Christians of Europe and Muslims. Both parties were guilty of serious atrocities in what they called the name of their religion. I just wonder how Jesus would respond to the death toll of hundreds of thousands of people. There is also the sad fact that many Christians have used the Bible as the foundation for slavery, and others who have used the Bible to condone racism. This is horrific. And then there's those in Christian leadership who've been guilty of sexual and physical abuse, and others who worked hard to try and cover it up. How could anyone ever let this happen? And as much as Christianity and those who claim to be Christian have done the wrong thing, let alone failing to do the right thing, what I really want to stress is that the problem is with people. It is people who have let us down, people who have made mistakes, not Jesus. Because Jesus defines Christianity, not the people. It's Jesus who shows us what God is like. And it's Jesus who models a loving way to live. As those who his community hated, Jesus loved. Those who his community wanted to kill, Jesus forgave. And those who his society considered disgusting, Jesus held and he healed. It should never be forgotten that Jesus was a victim of injustice, and he called for the forgiveness of his enemies whilst hanging on a cross. There are those that have done wrong, and they try to justify it by claiming that it's done in Jesus' name. But this is so far from what Jesus ever instructed. It's our need for greed, our desire for power, that has caused us to hate, attack, enslave, and cause suffering, instead of offering care. And it's tragic, because it's the exact opposite of what Jesus said we should be known for. This is how everyone will recognize that you are my disciples, when they see the love you have for each other. There's another story that needs to be told about Christians. Now, it doesn't excuse or make up for our failures, but it does remind me that there are things we as Christians can be proud of. Throughout history, following the lifestyle and model of Jesus has brought change to this world. There are the stories of the countless schools, hospitals, and homeless shelters that were not only started and funded by churches, but were run by Christians with kindness, care, and sacrificial love. As much as parts of the church have been guilty of justifying slavery, there's also men and women like Abraham Lincoln, William Wilberforce, Harriet Tubman, who were driven to end it. And they were driven to end it through the words of the Bible, the life of Jesus, and the belief that freeing those enslaved was God's desire all along. Each made in his image, each made equal. Not only has this happened in the past, but there are also beautiful and radical expressions of this happening today, both here and around the world. There are thousands of Christian organizations and churches that are working in some of the toughest parts of the world, bringing about hope and change. One Christian organization that is close to my heart and considered to be working with the untouchables of society is the Leprosy Mission. And although it's an international charity today, it actually had humble beginnings here in Ireland. It was started by an Irishman called Wesley Bailey in the 1870s. He went to India on a short trip and visited a leprosy colony in rural India, and his heart was absolutely broken. He said if there was ever a Christ-like work, it was to go amongst these poor sufferers. Now, when people often hear the word leprosy, they'll think it's a skin disease of the past, a tragic way of how the world used to be. And although that's true in most Western countries because we do have the cure, sadly there are still 16 countries around the world that still suffer under the consequences and stigma of leprosy.
Recently I travelled with the Leprosy Mission Ireland to help document some of their work in southeast India. As we were travelling, the team explained to me that every 2 minutes someone will hear the words, "You have leprosy." I was shocked when I found out that we would be interviewing a young girl called Yeshwari, who was much younger than me and who unfortunately had heard those words. When we were interviewing her, you could see the devastation in her face as she told us about losing her job because of her leprosy. She explained that her family not only suffered financially, but that they also suffered from being excluded from the community. And yet, she was eternally grateful and full of joy at what the Leprosy Mission had done for her. They treated her illness and fought the stigma around her by investing in her and her family. And not only that, but they also enabled her to get her job back.
If their mission was only one-dimensional, Yeshwari would only get the cure, but not the solution. The Leprosy Mission models the mission of Jesus by bringing healing, restoring dignity, and breaking the stigma. It's a beautiful expression of church today. If you are just to focus on all the negative things that people in the church have done, you'll never see the whole picture. I'm humbled by the other side of the story. All those brave men and women that I know around the world today that are standing up to be counted. They are forgiving those who persecute them, bringing food and water to those who are suffering, and educating those who have almost nothing. They aren't thinking about the evil that caused it. They just work, forgive, stand up, and carry on. All those people, they are the church as I see it. This wider community that I love to belong to. There seems to be this dividing line between moments that Christians wish they could forget and also these moments that Christians are proud of. But when the church has lived and loved like Jesus, these hope-giving moments have echoed throughout generations. For me, it's why I love to be part of it.